I'm Guru Subramanian Swaminathan.
Listening platform.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Listening Platform. We are starting a new episode. This is more on the tech side. Welcome, Puneet Matai. And Puneet is a very good friend of mine, probably for the last 2 decades, I would say. And uh, Puneet has been discussing about this particular podcast for the last couple of months, and we thought finally, okay, let's take the bite and let's do it now. So we are restarting again now from the listening platform side also, and this is the first podcast which we are recording for the next few set of episodes which you are going to watch. Welcome, Puneet. Normally, what we do is like we ask the guest to introduce themselves. Would you like to introduce yourself, Puneet?
Thank you, Guru. I mean, I would try. Thanks for the setup and the context, and thanks for making this happen over a long weekend. But it would be fun. I mean, again, discussing that.
Couple of things which I want to bring up is when I was researching about yourself, I think we got connected after a period of time. So I also realized that one is like you got a honorary doctor degree recently, probably 3-4 years back. And I didn't realize it at that point in time when we were working, but I think you and a couple of three more people had got a US patent also in your name. So that was like, oh, okay, that's great. And yeah, I mean, just from the audience perspective also, I think Puneet has been into the AI data space long before the AI became a buzzword. Now, like, there's a lot of headlines everywhere about AI. So Puneet has been into the machine language and on all those stuff even before it became a buzzword. So that's reason why I thought I will bring in Puneet for this podcast. Absolutely not for the headlines, but what is happening behind the headlines and what prompted Puneet to be in this space. So let's start off with that point, Puneet. So you are into AI. When I say AI, you are into AI governance, data management, data analytics perspective. So also done your degree around that. Basically, you have been head of strategy in many of the banks like Standard Chartered Bank, Santander Bank in Boston, and you have been in Rio Tinto, and now you are with Temus also, right? So everything is related. So what made you come into this field? Okay.
Okay, I think it happened by chance to start with. Going back to 2004 when I started my career. So it was, as I said, it was a typical software engineering, very coding centric and very development centric started with. And I used to love it, right? In the initial part of my career, I used to love coding. I used to be like this hardcore developer, back end coding, front end coding, blah, blah, blah. And then since 2004 to 2007, I was very integrally involved in the technical core development team, right? So the core banking development team. Now, at that particular time, all of us juniors and freshers used to think that, okay, to grow, we need to go to on-site. So on-site opportunity. Yeah, so the on-site opportunity, that happened with one of the key ASEAN banks here, and then my first on-site happened in China. But the role was very different. The role was more of a data migration expert, which I had no clue about. I had no clue about migration, how migration happens from one system to another, because I was typically building modules like functional modules like interest and transaction management and all that. And then suddenly I'm just thrown into this ocean of world of data as well as migration, which I had absolutely no experience about. To top upon that, in the challenge is there was a senior who I was supposed to assist during this. So it wouldn't have been on me. So at the client side, the senior was actually an expert in the whole organization, the migrations as well as the config workshops, etc., which is the part of the migration exercise to start with on how the migration planning and all that happened. Unfortunately, or now if I look back at it, it was fortunate to a certain extent because I got a chance to learn. But at the same time, unfortunately, the person couldn't make it at the last moment. So it was just me stuck there right in front of the client having workshops, and then there was an integration partner involved. So all of them, and then I'm in China. I'm very young, like around 24, not even 24, 23, 24 years old. It's my first on-site stint, and I have no clue about data, what my is and all that. That's where it started. Used to be like day full of workshops where my initial days would just go by, oh, I'll get back to you for this. And then overnight, I would just go back into the hotel room and just start working on it.
Okay.
The only thing that I knew at that time was how to read the code because I was a builder. When I read the code and then I was trying to stitch around the data, and I would look at the data and then read the code around it. So that's when I realized like how much deep expertise is can be achieved just looking at the data and the story it tells. That's where it mattered a lot. And then I've been in those 3 months or 4 months of that exercise of being exposed entirely. That taught me a lot about data and its storytelling capabilities, and the kind of quantum and the kind of impact it has for any organization, and that intrigued me. Earlier, how it used to be, we would used to be loaned for like a 1 year project and get deputed, and then once the project is over, you go back to your specific owning department, right? So core engineering, the department that you were hired for. So I went back to core engineering, but this particular experience never left me. So we talk about AI these days. We talk about a lot of analytics these days, like the how tech has evolved and all that. Yes, tech has evolved, but the concepts have not. The concepts remain the same, because we were doing analytics even that time. We were doing our analytics in SQL, directly writing SQL queries, writing procedural SQLs and the PL SQLs, and as well as going through Excels, the pivots, and they have been there. They have been there for quite some time. The only thing that wasn't there at the time was the quantum, the volumes of the data. That it was mostly structured data that we used to deal with. The kind of unstructured data that has evolved over the period
was not there.
The tech to handle that kind of information in near real time was not there. But the concept of analytics and data was always there. It was, and that's where I started with it. Was fortunate to get more and more projects more aligned to data, and it just evolved, and and I also grew into that interest, working more and more into that space. I will come back to the patent thing later for one of the questions, probably, and as we flow in the conversation.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where I started. So it was
pretty long time, right? I think after that, I think you have moved on. For example, in Standard Chartered, you were with the head of data, and you were sort of like in peak, and then suddenly you made a break, and then you went on to studies, basically. So what I can relate to is your continuous need to relearn everything. Was that one of the reasons did you go for studies again, or?
Yes, it was my curious mind. So I have always been curious about learning. So curious about like questioning, just the questioning aspect of things, questioning everything, questioning the status quo and all that. It took me time. If you would see my journey, right, it was until 2011 or 12. I was still on the very tech end of things, slowly moving towards more business facing roles, right? So as I said, for 2007 also, my first business facing or client facing role was more of a data migration, but it was still a very tech oriented role. So there was not much of business conversations or functional conversations. And I was not experienced enough to talk about it or to understand business as much. But as I grew, during the period of time, like we're learning more about how data can storytell, how data can actually work things out. It was during the time of 2010 to 2013, this is where we worked together a lot in one of our APEC banks and APEC client, and then that's where it started gradually moving more towards client facing, like how to introduce newer functionality, how that's impacting the revenue for the client directly. So that was more again on the curiosity of learning. So that intrigued me. That was a lot more interesting than just working on a particular tech stack I wouldn't say for the sake of working on it, but just because you like technology doesn't mean that you're working on it without having an end goal. And the end goal was always business driven. That's what I started realizing. And then I moved to Standard Chartered. It was more of
that's interesting.
Of a role that was bridging the gap between business and technology. It was right at the intersection. So that's where I was when I moved there. I started with them as a consultant, as an external consultant, and then they realized the value that I bring on the table, and they brought me on board as their head of data management specifically for their financial crime compliance, risk management, and overall AML. I had no clue about this business, this side of the business. I learned a lot about the business side of things, because then I was able to relate it better to the technology and what we need to solutionize, how we need to solution the business problems through like just aiding through the technology. And there was a lot of data and AI and then analytics, traditional ML and analytics involved in that, which again I didn't have a lot of exposure to. I had a lot of exposure on the infrastructure and architecture side of things, on data, and then the modeling side of things and the data management side of things. But when it came to how now this particular data is like the underlying data infrastructure is actually helping to bring up a model in place, curiosity again. So that curiosity over the period of 3-4 years that I worked with Standard Chartered and as head of data science, I was like, okay, now this is something that that's a missing piece, that's a gap, that's a missing piece in the puzzle for me, and I want to complete it. And that's where I just took a sabbatical, because we had implemented the initial strategy and the model for a few pilot countries already, and it was just a matter of BAU going ahead.
Yeah.
So the challenge part was over, and
Let's
also
take a
the
break.
learning curve was gonna go down. So I'm like, okay, what should I do next? This is the missing piece. So I took a break, took a sabbatical from them, moved to the States, pursued my master's in applied analytics, which actually I didn't go into a deep tech of data science at that time, and it was a conscious decision, because I knew that I do not want to go entirely
Background.
again, because I came from that background, and I wanted to grow more towards application of the technology towards business solutioning. And that's why I very intentionally chose this program, which was one of its kind at that time. It was 2018. There were not too many programs in the world that time which were teaching analytics or applied aspect of analytics or AI. And this was with Columbia. There was only one cohort before us. They were also learning as they were growing, in the field was evolving heavily that time. So it was a very good experience for me. It was a very good learning exposure as well. So that just moved there too.
And somewhere along the line, right? I think it started off a job, then it went into university. Somewhere along the line, you also started feeling the responsibility around all this stuff. Why do you feel so responsible on that?
Yes. So responsibility, I would say, has been part of the personal front, because I haven't had an easy childhood. So from the very beginning of my experience or growth, the sense of responsibility have always been there. Taking ownership, bottom line responsibility. When it comes to the professional side of things, as I mentioned earlier, right, it's been more like, work smartly to get things done, however you want to get things done. Ultimately, the goal should be you should be getting things done. This changed with one of my experiences working with Standard Chartered.
Absolutely.
I failed. And you get to have some failures to learn the sense of responsibility in a different sense, right? So there was one incident that happened that I felt that, I've done everything rightly, everything will go smoothly, we'll get things done on time, and that's it. That's what the goal was. But was the goal to get things done rightly? Probably didn't think through, and it didn't happen. There were certain line of heads in business with wealth of experiences. They corrected me. They corrected me, gave me a shocker in terms of not approving what was supposed to be approved, and because they then pointed out rightly that this can go down a wrong path, and this is not completely thought through. This is not right. And then that sense of responsibility at professional side of things also evolved. When I started pursuing my master's, initially I had no plans to. I just wanted to take it as a break from the corporate world, just learn, and then suddenly comes up an opportunity to not only learn but teach what you have learned, not from just the tech angle, but what you have learned in the industry. By that time, I had 14-15 years already in the industry. So there was an opportunity to share what I have learned with greater minds but younger minds who are still evolving. So I think for the last 6 months of my whole master's, I started teaching
industry experience also,
learning, but bringing it an angle of real world examples and real world stories. Yes, so there was a sense of responsibility that I took in teaching these younger guys and girls, like from the students from across the world, 40% international, 60% American students. These students were like just freshly out of their senior schools, and they were just gonna go into their fresher years into college. They didn't have the sense at that particular time. You don't have the sense of a lot is happening in the world, but what path I should take. So that's where I realized like that's a huge responsibility to shape, at least be able to influence and at least show them the right path on whether they really want to go to this through this path of data
Okay.
science, or they want to go into the business analytics side of things, or they just want to talk about business and not nothing to do with coding, right? So as part of so I had to design this curriculum myself, which I was going to take. And when I was designing this curriculum, I had to basically think through on the real world examples, but also think through what I was learning and what I was learning on board with the masters, but at the same time what was not working. So I had the chance to actually evolve the program and the curriculum to make it better, to make it more
Okay.
responsible, and make it more guidance oriented, pressure minds. And I was amazed to see the results
Okay.
after, because
Okay.
you do get a formal feedback after you have done with the cohort. So I had taught two
Okay.
cohorts. I got a 4.5 out of 5 as the feed from these two cohorts. But the best sense of satisfaction and the sense of responsibility that I have done something good, and full of pride, was
Okay.
that 75% of those students actually
Amazing.
moving towards the journey of data science and analytics, because they were so intrigued by
Okay. That's good actually, right? If you know what you don't want, that's also good.
for them, which is also exactly at that age, right? Sometimes we at this day also we don't know what we don't want clearly, right? So we are always wishing for something, but we do not know what exactly we don't want. So that was also like a success factor, right? So it was really a successful stint. I learned a lot teaching, and I learned a lot of sense of responsibility.
Thanks, Puneet. That's a classic example, right? Thank you so much.
It's been a
I think that also brings in the next concept about trust, basically, right? Now you design a lot of systems which is being trusted by many people actually. At what scale do you trust these systems? Okay.
I do not entirely. And I have been a proponent and advocate of not trusting blindly. So there is a concept these days that is revolving around autonomous intelligence, right? So AI moving from artificial to from semi-artificial to fully autonomous, and fully autonomous workflow and intelligence. I have never, even today, in amongst all of my proposals, the solutions to the client, I do not propose a completely autonomous workflow ever. There's the human in the loop aspect that I always bring in. Personally, I don't trust. We are not there yet. Also, and plus, I personally feel that we should not lose control of the things. I mean, whether it's me being control freak, or it's about the system and the trustworthy systems, we have not evolved. The systems have not evolved entirely to a place where we can fully trust them blindly, especially for someone like, for industries like highly regulated ones, right? Healthcare, finance. It directly impacts your life as an individual. And can I trust blindly on something, on a system
Okay.
is working for me? Say, for example, I am trading day in, day out, right? It's my money going in. Would I blindly trust anybody, whether it's a human or whether it's a system? I would never blindly trust any of that.
Okay.
With my own personally hard-earned money. Well, I would at least need to have a view, over envisaging and an overlapping view on what's happening, be able to review what's happening, and then be able to override that decision that the system might have made with its own analytics and own analysis, which I agree, there is a lot of grunt work that goes into day-to-day analysis and day-to-day study and collating information, gathering information all together. That used to take a lot of time. Now that's something that can be done in minutes. Fantastic. We use it.
Okay.
But we don't use it as autonomous intelligence. We use it as augmented intelligence. So for
Than
me,
autonomous.
AI,
Okay.
I would rather use
Is it because of
than autonomous.
what mission critical
Yeah.
the particular system is? Say, for example, healthcare, space, or it is like your own some personal system in your house. Probably, yeah, you can make it autonomous.
Yeah.
Is it based on the mission critical of that particular system, or
It definitely brings the impact, the
Okay.
end impact of the system and what the system or the solution is built for, right? So healthcare. Let's just take classic examples of a cancer diagnostic, right? We do envisage okay, for false positives. We do envisage for for false negatives first. False negatives and false positives in this kind of a really critical, impactful aspect of solutioning or system, which is just diagnosing cancer and just
Okay.
telling you a yes or no, you have cancer or you don't have, with some rationale behind. But unless I actually include that rationale in the system and how you actually came up with this, you give me the transparency and not be just a black box. If I, as a doctor, or if there's just an autonomous system, right, going to the directly to the patient saying that, oh, you have cancer, or opposite, you don't have cancer, and it's just there's no human in between rationalizing it or even at least reviewing that particular decision, then you're on your own, right? As a patient, you're just on your own. Why is like, if you have cancer, but if it was a false positive, you didn't have, look at the trauma, consider the trauma and the impact you might have. On the contrary, if you had it and say it was like stage 3 or stage 4 or whatnot,
a different impact.
Stage 1
Absolutely.
or stage 2, it's something which is, it's kind of a hallucination altogether. You just go and you just go happy, but over a period of next 6 months, you realize, no, that wasn't the case. So you couldn't get the treatment that you actually deserve to and you should have 6 months ago, and it could have been cured. It's so not entirely trustable. Yes, the systems are evolving to an extent of an accuracy of, say, even 95% of detection. But what about that 5%? I need to be able to make sure that that 5% doesn't go. We need to be 100%. I mean, even as a doctor, humans, we cannot, like, the human diagnosis of it was somewhere around 75 to 80%. So yes, there was a 20% gap. That gap has been has been reduced by these systems and technology, but there still has to be that human in the loop, and that's what I advocate for. Even if we go to 100%, like,
I think from the AI governance perspective, I think many companies and organizations are actually devising the AI governance with a very clear human in the loop, not like fully autonomous. But again, I think those who hear this conversation, they may think that it's autonomous is not right and things like that. But no, I think there are like multiple use cases for using AI specifically on agentic AIs, autonomous and things like that. It all depends on the mission critical specifically, and also having the human in the loop.
So that's where there's a risk management aspect to it, right?
Absolutely.
Like, there are multiple acts. They have been well thought of, right? EU AI Act and all. They decide the system that can be autonomous and that cannot be autonomous based on the risk factors and the risk identifications. The more end user
Absolutely,
facing the system is, the more impact it has. So it would be always called high impact.
Coming back to the AI part, right? I think what scares you most? Is it about any limitations on AI, or is it about how we use AI?
Later part. I don't think the way we are evolving, the way the technology is evolving, and the space is evolving itself. I think even within our lifespan, we will see by, say, 2030, 2050, a lot of autonomous systems working amongst us as humanoids, right? What I feel our eyes gets more scared about is our over-reliance and over-dependence on those, which we are already seeing. As a species, although we are on one aspect, we are working on making these systems more and more intelligent. So obviously there is a human intelligence part to it, because if we were not intelligent, we would not be able to make these systems intelligent. But looking at the generation now, and the upcoming generation, over-reliance, I think we're just getting dumber and dumber that way. Why I'm saying that is if you remember the struggles in terms of, the smallest of the things that we had to go through, but there were experiential aspects of things.
That's right.
So we have learned and we have evolved experientially, doing things by ourselves,
hands-on,
and then learning from our failures, our own failures that we committed, right? With which you're already seeing people have, like, especially
Gen Z now.
I don't know the terminologies of Gen Z and the Gen Alpha, Gen Betas and all. But the more you are saying they're more virtually inclined, they're more digitally inclined, yes, they're more digital savvy. But that's pretty much it. There's no reality aspect of things. There's no ground roots, hands-on experience and experiential learning. So that's what I'm more scared about. We have already heard instances of people believing into what AI is feeding them and just going with it blindly, right? Someone, a young person, believing in an AI bot as true companion, and then just
scares you.
Yeah. Okay. So that's what's me the most.
So in your view, like, given where you are in your professional life, how do you think overall the evolution will happen in next 10 years in the data and AI space? Okay.
So we do say, like, a lot of jobs would be taken away. and I do see that happening. But at the same time, a lot of jobs would evolve too, right?
Okay.
A lot of jobs that are not there currently. Like 4 or 5 years ago, we didn't have anything called as AI engineers.
AI engineers. Okay.
We had data engineers, but we had nothing called as AI engineers.
Hmm.
So AI engineer is a new job, right? There's a new job role. So there are a lot of jobs around it. But then data analysts, how many job opportunities do we get see today coming up in the data analyst? If we just take up the statistics and the comparisons from 5 years ago to now, we'll not rarely see any data analyst jobs. So yes, that's the evolution that would happen. But grunt work, day-to-day activities of few aspects of PMOs, few aspects of change management, few aspects of personally I'm seeing at my own organization that is happening. A lot of ops roles are gonna get redundant because a lot is being taken over by AI, and then it makes life easier, and it's faster. It's way faster. A lot of consulting work also, right? Where a lot of interns and consultants used to churn,
That's
presentations of
yeah. Even I think even in legal side,
it's not happening anymore.
the junior roles
Even
being gobbled up by the AI contract systems and things like that. But again,
paralegal. But then there is going to be evolution, right? So AI governance, for example, my own personal space is very niche still, because we do not have a lot of use cases that are still like from a company, from an industry or evolution aspect. The industry is still moving at its own pace, even though technology has the regulated industries, specifically like banking, financial services, healthcare, they are moving in their own space because their existing tech stacks do not support evolution at the pace the technology in it on its own is evolving. So the kind of use cases we are seeing is again still more reducing the operational overheads, evolving the costs ROI on more operational aspects of things, the more internal process optimizations, then focusing to the end focusing like end user focus, or end client focus,
okay,
like directly liaising with the client, other than the chatbots, right? So you will see a lot of chatbots evolutions, right? So you would see a lot of IVRs
on the other side.
You would realize there's an AI flavor, yeah, AI flavor to it. But as soon as there is some decision making, as soon as there is something, there is an escalation, they just pass it on to the human. So I think that's something that would still take time in the next 5 to 10 years, where the industry will evolve. But there will be a lot of middle office and back office operations that would be impacted with this. Front office would still remain. There would still remain a human touch to it, right? So and that's not going anywhere. But in terms of the back office and middle office, the way things would evolve is there would be a lot of governance. There would be a lot of reviewer and the risk management, compliance aspect of things. Those roles would be there. There would be a lot of engineering focused roles that would come in from a tech side of things, that how they are going to make sure that the architecture is scalable, the solution is scalable to to scale the solution and
Absolutely.
with the ever growing data.
Good. That's good. Thank you so much for that. I think we have covered the length and breadth of the things which we wanted to cover actually. And see, and you're also in a hotspot now in Singapore where things happen pretty fast actually. I hope we explore this journey together, and thank you so much for doing this podcast, Puneet. Any last words from your side?
Not many. I mean, yeah. Again, I think a key takeaway from me would still be for the generation evolving, and for those who are still like trying to get into this field. There's a lot happening. There are times, even though being in the center of everything, there are a number of days where I feel like that FOMO is there, but it's real. It's real because the pace at which it is evolving, you would not know everything. Someone who calls themselves as expert or a leader in the space today, probably, okay, I don't want to say stuff, but I don't think there's anybody who's an expert today, because you are an expert today for a particular space, then the space is evolving so much that you have to continuously learn. You have to be ready to be curious. So my key giveaway from this would be keep learning. Be curious. The more curious you are, the more you would be able to learn. Also, avoid relying completely on technology or AI. Use it more as an augmented helper, like an assistance for you to make.
Great. That's an excellent closing. Thank you so much, Puneet. And that's a wrap, everyone. Thank you so much for watching, and we will circle back in the next episode. Thank you.
Thank you, Guru. Thanks a lot.